Hey, this was a really good. Is there anything about World Systems 3.0 we didn't see, or any horizon stuff as you look to the future, and as optimistic or areas of concern or hopes for you in terms of the development of this worldview World Systems 3.0?
Yeah, there's two big points I wanted to make to wrap it up. The first one is to say, let me tell you the four phases we're in and where we're shifting.
Please, yeah.
And then the really big punchline is that I see a fifth wave coming, basically, or a shift in the structure. And we haven't had one of those since the 1690s. So
fasten your seatbelt, folks.
Exactly. When the techno economy became an independent institutional structure from the state. Which spun off basically in England, Sweden, Netherlands, that part of the world first, and then other places where it became separable structures like the stock market, the insurance markets, and all that other stuff, justifying economics as its own language. Okay. So anyway, where are we? So the postmodern wave, 1940-ish to 2020-ish.
Yep.
We're all kind of like well over all the critiques of postmodernism, and we're all ready to move on to the next thing. So it's just a matter of laying the track down.
Yep.
And so the debate is metamodernism the answer? Or is it transmodernism? Or is it transhumanism? Or is it posthumanism? And so there's various different camps. And the task of answering that is to say, what cultural paradigm are we in? And why would we predict that? Well, most of the other people I see in the metamodern space are predicting themselves with only 2 or 3 waves deep. They're basically saying, look, here's modernity, postmodernity, and then us. And when you do it that way, you think that metamodernity is just the folding of the two in a non-dual state. Okay? So you just say modernity, postmodernity, non-dual version of that, metamodernity. That would be the assumption that the way that history always progressed is some sort of non-dual integration. I'm making the claim that no, we started there. It doesn't progress that way. That is the reset button. In fact, non-dualism is the reset button where we try to create stability, not change. It is when we try to say, stop. We do not want the world changing so fast in so many directions. We want to declutter and recenter and find a calm, and everyone wants to meditate and put everything in alignment and get their chakras in order and all that stuff. And that's not new. That's the very dawn of civilization. We've been there before. And so we're in one of those phases. Okay. One of the dangers of those phases is that you do have a little bit of a power swing. And so the feudal period was one of those phases. It was a non-dual phase where everything reintegrated into the lord and manor, and the religion and the state started creeping together, and economics were getting really tight. And basically the way it works is everything's really harmonious inside the system, but there's no challengers and there's no balance of power. So China is doing this. And so if China were to, on the current trajectory, were to win the future, they would be instituting a globalist, non-dualist culture with China at the center. Okay.
Yep.
That would be a cultural hegemony. Okay. Going back to the world systems model. Would we predict a cultural hegemony in China? Probably only if they were the center of both science and technology. Guess what? It's not how Asia works. It's a triangle. The East Asia has been a historical triangle of Japan, Korea, and China. It has also been a historical triangle of multiple religions. It has also been a historical triangle on all these. Basically, the Chinese system is not China alone. It's the entire East Asian system. Okay. When China is dominant culturally, and it becomes this integrated system and structure. When rivalry picks up between Japan and Korea and so forth, it actually challenges that. So you would say, well, if Korea and Japan are serious challengers to China in any way, they might be able to disrupt that sort of integrative pattern. Okay. That's just one way to analyze it.
One way to think about it.
China versus India, right? So you can analyze that dynamic. So there's a lot, or Europe, or you can, so there's a lot of these different triangulations you have to make these predictions. So it gets messy. Not
I bet.
But the short answer is this: only if the new hegemon succeeds in creating this non-dualistic kind of global culture would we would say that's our paradigm.
Okay.
So metamodernism doesn't actually become the global paradigm in my model unless it's embodied as the hegemonic force. Okay. So it's not enough that a few people in, art circles in the Netherlands and, California love it. It's got to be, legitimized.
Yep.
So we could be 80 years out from a time period where that is the case. And if that is the correct prediction, then the metamodern paradigm as described by the integral folks are correct. The non-dualist analysis where we go modernism, postmodern, metamodern. What if you take a longer harmonic, you see a different pattern, more powerful? So the older the harmony, the more powerful. I said that at the beginning of the video. So if we were to see a harmony that was like, that's not enough cycles of analysis to understand the future, then that would be the wrong interpretation of what's going to happen. And so let's say we go back to the beginning of the Industrial Revolution and say, we are still in the industrial era. We're still in the industrial era. That's the anchor point. And so all cycles must originate there until we leave that era. You see? Okay. So just like emergence at any stage,
makes
we're
sense.
Still there until we create a new system where that's no longer the harmony pattern.
Okay.
My claim is we're still in that era still. And people are a little jumping the gun and saying that we're in a new era. Why am I saying that? We don't have a fifth structure yet. So as long as we got the same structure, we're in the same wave harmonics, we're stuck and anchored from the first industrial paradigm. Guess what? I'm the only one who actually has an explanatory argument here. Ask them how they actually justify their model.
Right.
They don't know. Right. They don't know how it works. They just modern, postmodern, the next thing, Hegelian. And that's as far as we go. So my theory is that we need to go back all the way to the beginning. And that means there's 4 waves we need to take into consideration since then in culture. And that would be, it goes, the liberal period, then the modern period, then the postmodern period, then the meta, and the period, and the older harmonic, the traditional harmonic behind that is the traditionalist society that is often mentioned in some other people's work. But they skip the liberal period. Lena skips it. And this is critical that Lena skips this. The 80-year period, the liberal period, is where both of the great magisteria of our times were invented, the techno-economic and the scientific. And so to skip that harmonic is to basically miss the most important root action that we've been living in since the 1600s. And so adding that back in the model, I'm going to come up with a different interpretation of metamodernism than they do. So I'm not going to have time to get into it in this video, but that's a cliffhanger.
Well, it's a cliffhanger. We get it right to the edge, and then we'll see. No, it's beautiful.
Right. And then I'll not go into any depth with the other 3.
Okay.
We already said we're going from the digital, from the 5th techno-economic, and the 6th that we're crossing over right now is you can call it either the green or organic. I prefer organic because that's the description of the technology and the type of design logics.
Okay.
Green is like a political statement.
Yep.
So basically, we are entering that emergence period of that paradigm, and we have all the trajectories to prove it in terms of solar, in terms of quantum, and so forth. The third one, the political, is a 50-year shift, and this is like there's a couple of major models that I integrated for this, and every political science person knows them. I'm not going to explain it right now, but there's a sort of a liberal conservative harmonic pattern every 25 years, and then there's basically the what you call basically the foreign versus domestic harmonic every 50-ish years. So you get this cycle like this where basically you go around a quadrant of like domestic versus foreign or conservative versus progressive dominance and And so as we're going around that cycle again, we're coming up among the emergent swing. So we're shifting into a new political paradigm. Okay, political, technological, cultural, all happening now. And the fourth one, scientific. Well, that's also happening now because that's the except for that's on a half harmonic because it emerged 40 years ago. So that's the stabilizing force because it's the oldest harmonic. And so basically the complexity paradigm is stabilizing the others. And therefore, any one of those other paradigms that doesn't start with complexity as their base are making the same error that I said Lynn is making. You always have to start with the oldest harmonic as being your base. And so complexity first. So we are in a complexity dominant era that also has a meta modern push, which we are not defining correctly yet because we're misreading the tea leaves. And then we also have this this green swing or organic swing.
Organic,
right? And so you have all these stacks. Okay. Well, the thing is, we haven't had a stack this deep since the first industrial revolution, which is a signal of what? The end of that era, because they're all coming back around to basically the same level of intensity that we had when we created the liberal paradigm, the first industrial revolution, the political shift from colonialism, and like all happening at the same time. So over the next 40 years, we're playing out, yes, the same level of intensity change as as the liberal period.
All right. All right.
I say we are actually in a neoliberal period rather than a meta-modern period.
Meta-modern. Okay. So it's a second layer.
We should already know that because that's what everyone's whining about.
Yeah.
Right. So why aren't we just telling the truth and saying meta-modernism is the reaction to the liberal dominant, the neoliberal dominance? So I'm working on the definition of how to work this out because that's the political term, neoliberal. But basically, we need a better term. And Michelle Bowens is arguing for, he likes transmodernism instead.
Right, I know.
Because it implies a more open or liberal behavior. Yeah. And meta is much more rigid because it implies frames on top of frames on top of frames.
Okay.
So if the meta people are right, we're going into this non-dualist, heavy frame, heavy gem-like, rigid structure emanating out of China. And if the more neoliberal or what I would call the decentralization argument is correct, which is what Bowens and I are talking about, we are triggering an opening for a new institutional structure rather than just a re-entrenchment of these other four into a right. And so as this window opens, a fifth structure will be born, and we call it right now the Commons Magisteria.
Love it. Okay. Fascinating.
That was the big idea.
Right.
So
there it is. The fifth opens up.
Exactly. So when you have a door that opens in terms of harmonics now history could go otherwise. The events have to occur. So the events have to occur to create the Magistery of the Commons. Otherwise, it's a missed window. And guess what? We are going back to a rigid, integrated system. But if the window of opportunity is seized and we produce a fifth structure that we haven't had yet in the international system, that fifth structure will then create a new sort of leveling up of everything at once, which would be really nice because we could kind of use that. We're running up against the wall here, and that leveling is surrounding the environment. And so everyone can put two and two together and say our biggest wall is our biggest opportunity, which is a institutional structure around the two kinds of energy and data, right? One, basically the environment, essentially, and data being the human data, the world data problem.
Beautiful.
Digital twins and all that good stuff.
Love it.